So, good evening. You are to start on sensitivity analysis. So let us now view what is there on the sensitivity analysis. So you are to check now on the sensitivity analysis. So in the notes I gave you, the handout I gave you for the methods of dealing with the risk, sensitivity analysis is the first one. Sensitivity analysis is normally the first one, whereby we subject the key financial variables affecting the operation of business to adverse changes. Then now we weigh what effect we need to be able to have. So when it comes to the sensitivity analysis, we analyze each item in isolation. Then we pick those key financial variables on how they can be able to affect the operations. Then we come up with a way on how to analyze that. So there are normally two approaches on how to deal with the sensitivity analysis. Kuna the break-even point analysis and also the impact analysis. All of them are to establish the percentage change in any given variable for you to reject the project. So that's now what we should be analyzing when it comes to the sensitivity analysis. So we shall start with the first part of it, which is supposed to be the break-even point analysis. So under that sensitivity analysis in the handout, I was able to say that it is categorized into two. It is in the first one. There is the break-even point analysis and the impact analysis. So we shall start with that first of the break-even point analysis. We shall be able to start with the break-even point analysis. But the question that we normally ask ourselves, after you have accepted the project, you now ask what can happen in a given variable for you to reject the project. Because it is not that we are rejecting the project. We have already accepted. Now you ask yourself, what can happen in this variable for me to do it? To reject the project. That's what we mean by the sensitivity analysis. We simply subject our variable to adverse changes. For our revenue to affect you adversely, it must reduce. For the cost to affect you adversely, it must increase. That's now basically what we should be analyzing. Like if I ask you today a question, what can make you not to go home after the class? What is the key variable that affects you to go home today? The key variable that affects you are going home today is, it is basically the fare, isn't it? So what can happen in that fare so that you cannot be able to go at home? You pay how much when you go at home? Utalipa pesa ngapi ukienda nyumbani? Utalipa 50 bob. So if you go to the stage after class, you find it is 10,000. What will you do? No, you can't walk at that night. So you have to sleep in town. So that's the question we ask ourselves. What can happen in a given variable for me to reject the project? So you rather even stay in the stage up in the morning, isn't it? Rather than paying the 10,000. There's no cost after that because you'll not be around in the first place. Everyone else will be stranded, isn't it? So we are asking ourselves, after I have accepted a given project, what can happen in a given variable for me to reject the project? That's now the concept we shall be asking ourselves. So we have started with the one of the break-even point analysis. So we shall go straight on a question on the break-even point analysis. So the first question we shall be able to check November 2019, question number 1, part B. We check November 2019, question number 1, part B. We check November 2019, question number 1, part B. November 2019, question number 1, part B. So that question for November 2019 question number 1, part B. The one for Sun Technologies Limited is considering investing. So it should be on page 22. When you check on page 22, there is that question for November 2019, question number 1, part B. So Sun Technologies Limited is considering investing 50 million shillings in a new machine to manufacture the computer microchips with an expected useful life of 5 years and no salvage value. It is expected that 20 million units of the microchips will be sold each year at least 3 per unit. So variable production costs, the variable production costs are expected to be 1.65 per unit, while the incremental fixed cost will be 10 million per annum. The cost of capital is meant to be 12%. So required, evaluate the sensitivity of the project to the net present value to the following changes. Number 1, the sales volume. Number 2, the sales price. Number 3 will be what? Variable cost. So when they are asking you to get the change in the variable for you to reject the project, that will be the break-even point analysis. But you will be getting another question where they will give you the change in the variable. They ask you to compute the new NPV. That will be the impact analysis. So here they are asking you to get the change in the variable for the project to be rejected. So we use the break-even point analysis. So we express it that at break-even point, so the concept is, so the question is November 2019. November 2019. It is meant to be, it is question number 1, part B. Question 1, part B, like that. So the concept we use is break-even point. So at break-even point, NPV should be equal to 0. At break-even point, NPV is meant to be 0. Then for the NPV to be 0, it also means that present value of the cash inflows must be the same as the present value of the cash outflow. For the NPV to be 0, it also means that present value for the cash inflows must be the same as the present value for the cash outflow. So we start with the first item, which is the sales volume. The first item we are going to analyze is meant to be the sales volume. The sales volume. So when we are analyzing the sales volume, we make it X. We normally make that variable to be X. Then we make NPV to be 0. Then we work backwards so that we can be able to get that figure. So in this question, there was no tax, which means no depreciation is required. So to get the annual cash inflows, remember the annual cash inflows. So to get the annual cash inflows, it is supposed to be given by P minus B, then X minus F, like that. So P is the selling price per unit, B is the variable cost per unit, X number of the units, but F will be the total fixed cost. But we are saying that we are dealing with the sales volume. Sales volume is now the number of units for the sales volume, which is meant to be our X. So in the question, they gave you the selling price. That selling price has been given as how much? I'm going to pay 3 shillings. So it will be 3 minus B is the variable cost per unit, which is how much? 1.65. So X is the sales volume, is the figure that we are looking for, so we don't know it. Then we subtract the fixed cost. Fixed cost was given in the question as how much? You are given 10 millions like that. So finally, it will be the same as what? 3 minus 1.65. 1.35 x minus 10 million. So that's now our annual cash inflows. We make the sales volume to be X because it is the fixed item you want to come up. So we now get the NPV, whereby we start by computing the present value of the cash inflows. So to get the present value for the cash inflows, we simply take the annuity multiplied by the present value interest factor for the annuity. So cost of capital was given in the question as 12%, and the economic life is 5 years like that. So annuity is the 1.35x minus 10 million. That's now our annuity. Then we multiply it by, I want you people to check in the second table, 12% in year 5. You check in the table, 12% in year 5. 3 points. So now when you multiply, when you open the brackets, we end up getting which figure? When you multiply this by this and also this by that, you shall be getting which values. When you multiply 1.35 by 3.6048, you get which figure? 4.8. Like that. Then you're going to get how much? 36.04. So you minus 36.048 million like that. And then we are supposed to subtract the present value for the cash outflow. So present value for the cash outflow is the initial cost. Present value of the cash outflow is the initial cost. That initial cost was which figure? It was 50 millions. So when we subtract the 50 millions, we now end up getting NPV, and that NPV is 0. We end up getting NPV, which is 0. And now we want to look for that X so that that NPV becomes 0. So the equation is now going to be 4.86648x minus 36.048 millions minus 50 millions. We end up getting 0. So we shall let these figures change to the other side so that we make X to be the subject. Yeah, so this one will be the same as 4.86648x should be equal to this one. They go that to become positive. It will be 80 what? 86.048 million. So you make now X to be the subject, where you get 86.048 divided by 4.86648. So that you get the value for X. we get 17 points. And the party are full figure because there are 3 decimal, there are 6 decimal places, there are in millions. 17 points. Then 17. This is not Russia. Yeah. So that now will be the new sales volume for NPV to be what? At 0. So you have to get the percentage change in that figure. So to get the percentage change, you take that 17,681,774. You subtract what you are given. Remember the sales volume that you are given? They gave you 20 millions. So you minus the 20 millions. Also divide by 20 millions. Then you show it as a percentage. So you want to know that sales volume will reduce by what percent. For us to reject that product, we want to establish it must reduce by what percent for us to reject that product. So here it has reduced by what percent? Online, you let me know the figure that you are coming up with. $11.59. We are also getting 11.59%. Yeah, so that is now the Roman letter 1. That now will be Roman letter 1, where we compute the percentage change. We get the percentage change in the variable for the project to be rejected. So after that, we go to the Roman letter 2. Roman letter 2, they were saying the sales price. Let us now go to the Roman letter 2. So Roman letter 2, it is going to be the sales price. So you make it X. The sales price, you do what? You make it X. The entire process remains. The entire process remains. We come here, but where there is the selling price, we make it X. Your sales volume, now it is not affected. We use the one that you are given. You are given how much? To repair 20 millions. Yeah, so now this go back to 20 millions. Then you also subtract 10 millions. So that we now come up with a new band. So everything remained the same, but now instead of the sales volume, we change to the selling price. The rest of the information goes back to where it was. Then we get the new value for the sales. So if I do that, I want to open those brackets. If I do that, so this will be 20 million X. Now you're 1.65. What by 20 should give you which figure? When you take that 20 millions, what by 1.65? Supposed to give us around which value? Inakuja 33 millions. So it will be 33 millions minus 10 millions. So finally, it will be the same as what? It will be the same as 20 million X minus 40 what? Sitakuwa 43 millions. And negative 33, negative 10. They turn out to be negative 43 millions. So that is now what will be our annual cash flows. So it comes to affect at this point. It now comes to affect at this point, whereby it will now be 20 millions X minus 43 millions. Then this one is not changing, so that we get now the new annual cash flows that point. So when you take that 20 millions multiplied by 3.6048, when we take 20 millions, sorry, 72.0796, like that, million X, isn't it? Na hii ingine itakuja ngapi? 150 point, like that. Yeah, hii ingine hii itakuwa affected, then NPV equals 0, like that. So that you want now to create that equation. So now the equation is going to be we also collect the like terms. This should be 72.096 should be equal to. So when those crosses the other side, they become positive. So it will be positive for us. Be positive 205 points. So now we make X to be the subject. So when you make X to be the subject, it's now going to be 205.0064. Then you divide by 72.096. So our X, you can round it off to 2 decimal places because of the variable cost. Variable cost, it was in 2 decimal places. So this one should be 2.84. So when you round it off to 2 decimal, it will be 2.84 like that. So we get the percentage change now in that variable. We get the percentage change. It will be what you have calculated as 2.84, but we had been given which year? 3. They had given you 3. You also divide by 3, then you express it as a percentage. So that is now what will be the decrease in the selling price for you to reject the product. That now will be a decrease in the selling price for you to reject the product. It are reduced by what percent? 5.32, 5.22, 5.33. Are we getting 5.33? Yeah, so it is 5.33. So that is now meant to be for the sales price. Roman letter 3 is which item? Roman letter 3 is the variable cost. So we come there, we now look at the variable cost. Variable cost. So variable cost, we now make it X. So we still come back here. So here it will be 3. This would come back to 3. But now the variable cost will make it X. Then now we change this part. So when we change that part, it will be 60 millions minus this 20 million X minus 10 million. So it will end up being this 50 millions. 50 millions minus 20 million X. I hope that's how it will be. Because here kuna subtract kwa hii inakuwa 50 ndio hiyo itabaki. So we shall now have it at this point. We shall now have it at this point as 50 millions minus 20 million X. So that hiyo itakuwa ngapi? So when we open the bracket, this multiply 50 should give us which figure? 80 millions point 24. Then minus what? 72.09. Just 16 million X. So the rest are not changing. Then now you also create that question. You now also create the new question, which is meant to be 180.24 millions minus 72.096 million X minus 50 million should be equal to 0. So make X to be the subject and see it should give us which figure. So you are getting what percentage? Sorry?
9.4.
9 points. So you are getting which value? You are getting 1 point. We'll put 1 point. 1 point. When you round off to 2 decimal places, we go 1.8. 1.81. That report my power 1 point. So you also divide by 1.65. So we show it as a percentage. We should be required to show it as a percentage. So inakuja 9.7%. Yeah, so that is now what we should be able to. So we can comment about those variables. Yes. Sorry? Who used to be easy? 1.5 years. Let's not round off into 2 decimal places. Consider to report 2 decimal places. So we should be able now to comment about those values. we should now be able to comment about those files. So we should be able now to comment. So when we are commenting, there is the key variable, then percentage change. Then now you comment. Now we comment. So the first one was the sales volume. The first one was the sales volume. Sales volume ilikuwa ngapi? Tulipata which percent? 11.59. Then the second one is the sales price. Sales price tulipata nini? 5.28. So there were negative examples. Variable cost ilikuwa ngapi? 9. It was negative. Okay. So we are looking for a very slight change will make you to reject the project. So this one will be the most sensitive. Most sensitive. This one will be the least. This one will be the least. This one is moderately sensitive. Moderately sensitive. That's how they are, isn't it? Yeah, that's my question. What? For a cost to affect you adversely, it must increase. For the revenue to affect you adversely, it must decrease. So the effect of positive or negative has no impact. We look at the percentage change. Yeah, it is obvious for cost to affect you adversely, it must go up. For the revenue to affect you adversely, must be what? Reduce. And that's what has happened. Sales volume, it affects revenue. The selling price also affects revenue, but cost, it goes up. So that's why it is positive and negative. It's just a general rule. For the revenue to affect you adversely, it must go down. Your manner is going negative. For the cost to affect you adversely, it must go up. Your manner is what? It's positive. So that is normally the general rule. So that's now for that question. You want to check another similar question on the same. You want to check another similar question on that level. So the other question should be November 2015. November 2015. Question number 1, part B. November 2015. Question number 1, part B. November 2015. Question number 5. Question number 1, part B. Prayers is Nanzanga Sangapi, someone is asking. Sorry. So what are John's events? That's it. 3 minutes to go. Yeah, so I'm told there's still 3 minutes. So we can get the question. We start going through it. November 2015. So November 2015. It should be on page 50. It should be on page 59. You go to page 59. Page 59. Question number 1, part B. Page 59. There is a question number 1, part B. So that question 1, part B is that a company is considering whether to purchase equipment to increase its production and sales volume. The equipment cost is 500 million and has a useful life of 3 years, after which it can be sold as scrap for 80 millions. For each of the 3 years of usage, the equipment is expected to increase both the sales revenue and operating costs by 600 millions and 390 million respectively. The company's cost of capital is given as 10%. So required, compute the percentage change required in each of the following factors for the project to be rejected. So when they are asking you to get the change in the variable, that's the break-even point. You equate it to being NPV to be 0, isn't it? Then that variable, you make it X. Then you equate that equation so to come up with the value for that. So maybe we can just have a short break for those who are going for the prayers. Then we start immediately so that we can finish off that question. So.
So you got yeah. Yeah. What is this?
Sasa
So we start with the Roman letter 1. We start off with the Roman letter 1. Roman letter 1 is the initial cost of the equipment. So Roman letter 1 is the initial cost of the equipment. Start off. So it is still at break-even point. It is at break-even point. NPV should be equal to 0, whereby present value for the cash inflows must be equal to the present value of the cash outflow. So your initial cost of the equipment is the one who should be making it as X. So that one will be our X. Then also remember that to get the annual cash flows. To get now the annual cash flows, annual cash flows. It will simply be the sales revenue minus the variable cost. Minus the variable cost. So this time, there is no P, neither they have given us X. They have simply given me the total sales and also total variable costs. So we now compute it from that point. Then there was no fixed cost that was given. There was no fixed cost that were given, but instead they gave you the scrap value. So when you are under the initial cost, sales revenue was given. They gave us 600 millions. So we take the 600 millions. We minus the variable cost. Variable cost is 390 millions. So that should be able to give us 210 millions. To be able to give you the 210 millions. So we start off with present value of the cash inflows. We start off with the present value of the cash inflows. So it will be annuity multiplied by the present value interest factor for the annuity. So this time around, cost of capital is given as what figure? It will be 10% for how many years? So 10% for 3 years. So our annuity is the 210 millions. So check in the annuity table. What is 10% in year 3? 2.4869. So you multiply to give us the figure for that. So 522.249. So there was also the scrap value. There was also the scrap value. So scrap value only occur once. That will be 10% of this. So scrap value, the question had given us how much? 8. So they gave me a figure of 8. So we use now this first table. Apply the first table. So what is 10% in year 3? 0. So when we multiply, it should give us which figure? 60.104 millions. So when you add them together, you will get the present value of the cash inflows. 5. So we less present value for the cash outflow, which is the same as the initial cost. But we have said that we make it what? X. So that is the one we are analyzing. So that figure is X. So that NPV is equal to 0. So that figure, we make it X. So that NPV is going to be equal to 0. So which means that that X is the same as what? 582. So we get now the percentage change in that variable. We now get the percentage change. So percentage change be 582. So what are we given as the initial cost? I've given me 500 million. So also divide by. So for the cost to affect you adversely, it must. What was that? 16.47. Yeah, so that is now for the initial cost of the equipment. We go to Roman letter 2. Sorry. Okay, when the cash flows are the same for a given period of time, that will be the second table. But when it occurs only once, that is now the second step, the first table. So scrap value will only occur once. So we have said this what percent? 16.5. Yeah, so that is now our Roman letter 1. We now go to the Roman letter 2. So Roman letter 2 was which item? So we now go to the Roman letter 2. Which will now be the scrap value. So scrap value, we make it X. We start afresh the way it is. So you come right away at this point. The rest is not affected. Here where there is a scrap value, you make it X like that. Your E figure, ipinde kikuwe 0.7513 X. So that now this part is going to be 522.249 millions plus 0.713 X. But now your initial cost goes back to where it was. Remember, initially it was how much? It was 500 million. Yeah, your NPV is 0. So we just simplify it in that manner. Where there is the scrap value, we make it X. The rest of the information is not affected. Then initial cost now will go back to where it was. Was it 500 million? Yeah, so that we create an equation so that we shall now be able to create an equation where we make X to be the subject. So that equation is supposed to be 522. 249 and plus 0.751. So make X to be the subject. So much is negative. 6, 1. 0. Because the other one should be 4 decimal. They are supposed to be 6 decimal points, so they are in millions. So now after that, you get the percentage change. We now come up with the percentage change, where you get negative 29.61402. Subtract 80 millions, also divide by 80 millions. Let me show it as a percentage. So that one is giving us which percent? Sorry, negative 100 and what? Negative 137 points. Yeah, you can just round it off to 2 decimal places. So that is now for the scrap value. That's now for the scrap value. So Roman letter 3 was which item? So the next one is meant to be now the sales revenue. So number 3 will now be the sales revenue. So sales revenue, it will have an effect at this point. So this one, we make it X. But the variable cost will come back to that. So our sales revenue is now simply X minus 3.9. So sales revenue should make X. So as now our annual cash flows will be X minus 390. So you come here, you change this here to X minus 390 minutes. Then now we come to this point. So this one will now be 2.4869 X. Then when you take 390 multiplied by 2.4, 869, so give you how much? 969.89. Just one like that. Then hii ingine unakumbuka tukarudisha hapa 80 millions. Kurudisha hiyo back to 80 millions. Hii figure tulikuwa tumecalculate already. Ilikuwa 60.1. If you recall. It was 60.104. like that. Now, what we have only changed is that revenue to be X. These others, they go back to where they were initially. So finally, this will now be 2.4869x minus 969.891. Then also plus 60.104. Finally, plus this, but here was subtracted. Then minus that NPV to be. So that now your equation will be. So that your equation, so this NPV, right? Equation should be 2.4869x minus. So this is a minus, now you're in a plus. Minus 969.891 plus 60.104. So it will be the same as 9 kilowatts. Point. Then minus 500 millions will give you at 0. So now you also make X to be the subject. These ones, 2 of them will go the other side, it will become positive. So it will be positive 1409. Yeah, so you divide by 2.4869. So it X will be the sum of how much? 85?
88. No. 5279.
Naanza na 5.
No, iko sawa. 885.
885.
279.
Like that. So we get the percentage change. Because hii ina cross, ndio? Hiyo na hiyo zina cross kwa positive. When they cross, you add them. It will be 1409, isn't it? So 1409.787. Then divide by this figure. I hope you are getting that back. So that we get now the percentage change. We get now the percentage change. So for the percentage change, you now take that figure. We subtract. Tulikuwa tumepewa ngapi?
600.
Also divide by 600. Then show it as percentage. That is now for the break-even point analysis. That's now for the break-even point analysis. So the last time I tested your press, you put here November 2019. They have not tested for the last the last 2 years. They have been testing decision tree diagram and simulation. So they have not tested that part. So if they are going to come back to that topic, chances are they will now test you on sensitivity analysis. They will be able to test you on because simulation, they have tested twice. Decision tree diagram, they have also tested twice. So now it's their time to shift to the sensitivity analysis. So that is now about the break-even point analysis. So we now check the one for the impact analysis. What the questions we have done is on the break-even point analysis. We can now also do questions on the impact analysis. We can also now do some questions on the impact analysis. We can now check some questions now on the impact analysis. Now check some questions now on the impact analysis. Comment, I will not repeat. The first one, you find a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for the comment, you just repeat what we did in the other questions. Yeah. Yeah. So when I start this one for the impact, now I'll explain the difference. So the comment, so which is the most sensitive? It is obvious with what? The most sensitive is which one? Itakuwa sales. Yeah, sales revenue is always the most sensitive. Sales revenue ndio liko na the lowest, ndio. Ikafuatwa na initial cost. Yeah, hiyo ingine ni ya scrap value. Scrap value, it is normally negative because you incur additional cost to dispose some items. You have heard about that. That's why it will be a scrap value will be that big negative because you incur additional cost to dispose of some items. So basically that is what we can have from there. So you as financial analyst or financial managers, in any work that you will be doing as a financial manager, don't be interested in the costs. In any organization, people are concerned about revenue. Costs, you have no control over them. Electricity, you have no control. These are telephone charges, you have no, but you only monitor them. But the key issue is revenue. Once the revenue is there to finance those expenses, there will be no problem. A problem will come in when there is no revenue now to pay the salaries. There is no revenue to pay those expenses. So always remember, even if you have not done the question and they are asking you to comment, just quote the sales revenue and say it is the most sensitive. Costs are the least. So always remember that. In anything you do as a financial analyst or as a financial manager, the key issue are the cash flows. Once the business is able to generate sufficient cash flows, there will be no problem. Costs will be taken care of. You only need to monitor the cost. So always remember that. If there is a part of a question where they're asking to comment, just comment even without computing that revenue is cost sensitive. And that is always what will be there as the case. So the next question will be now on the impact. The one for the impact, I will start as to check the question for December 2013, question number 3. So question 2. Let us check December 2013, question number 2, part F. December 2013, we get the question number 2, part F. December 2013, we get the question number 2, part F. December 2013, question number 2, part F. So that question 2, part A, it is on page 75. It is meant to be on page 75. So page 75, there is a question number 2, part A. There is a question number 2, part A. Page 75, there is a question number 2, part A. So we want to distinguish when you use the impact analysis or break-even point analysis. So when they ask you to calculate the change in the variable, that is the break-even point analysis. When they are asking you to get the change in the variable, that will be the break-even point analysis. If they give you the change in the variable, then they ask you now to get the NPV. That is the impact analysis. So when the change is given, that will be impact analysis. When they are asking you to calculate now that change, that's the break-even point analysis. So we want to know that from this question. You want to know it from this question. So for this question, you are given part A. R Limited is considering a project with the following cash flows. They gave you year 1, year 0, 1, and 2. Cost of the plant, the running cost, and also the savings. R Limited cost of capital is given as 9%. So required from letter 1. Determine the sensitivity of the project to the changes in the levels of cost of the plant, running cost, and savings, considering each factor at a time, assuming each of the factor is varied adversely by what percent? Yeah, now they have given the change in the variable. Once they give you that change in the variable, that will be impact analysis. Then they are saying that it affects you adversely. For the revenue to affect you adversely, it must reduce. You reduce it by 10%. For the cost to affect you adversely, you increase it by the 10%. So always that is the rule. That's why the other question, you are getting some negatives for the revenue, but positive for the cost. So the first thing you do for this case, get the normal NPV. We get the normal NPV before we subtract each variable to adverse changes. So the first thing we shall do is to get the NPV. It should be present value of the cash inflows. We minus the present value for the cash outflows. So the cash flows are not the same. The cash flows are not the same. We shall be having the year, then cash flows, then present value interest factor. Your cost of capital have been given 9%. About 9%. So that we get the present value. So there was no tax that was given. Any moment there is no tax, we shall also not compute depreciation. When there is no tax, also there should be no depreciation. That's now what we shall be able to come up. So we start off with year one. We start off with year one. You can see the savings was how much? Year one. I'm going to prepare savings of how much? So you take the 12 million for the savings, you subtract the running cost. Running cost, you are given which figure? 4 million. So the difference will now give us the cash flows. It acquires 8 millions. So we take the 8 millions, there are 3 zeros at the top. Then you now check in the table. You check in the table what should be 9% in year one. 0.9. So when you multiply that by 8,000, it will give us which figure? 7? 733.
8,000, yeah. Yeah, it's 759.2.
There are only 2 threes,
Yeah.
so that this one comes to be 9. Then point what? Point 2 like that.
Yeah.
So we also go to year 2. So year 2, there is 14 millions. In 9 millions. So when you check in the table, 9% in year 2 should be which figure? 0.84. So when you multiply by that figure should give us how much? 75.3.
Yeah.
So mkiadd zinakuja ngapi? 14.5. So that is now our present value for the cash inflows. Then now we invest present value for the cash outflows. So that is what was given in year 0. You can see in year 0. They gave you how much? 10 million. So that you get now. So you get 14 points. So the first thing you get the NPV like that. What you do first, you compute the net present value. So now you want to subject the question to sensitivity analysis. So we start with the first one. You can see the first one is the cost of what? The plant. So we start off with the first one, which they are saying it is the cost of the plant. So we start off with the first one as the cost of the plant. The first one is now meant to be cost of the plant. So when it is the cost of the plant, it is the initial cost. So for it to affect you adversely, it must go up. So they say that it changes adversely by what percent? So get 110% of the 10 million and see it will now go up to how much? Itakuja ngapi? inakuwa 11 millions. So now the initial cost will be 11 millions. When it comes to this point, all the details will remain the same. Utakuja tu ubadilishe hii. You put there now 11 millions. Get the new NPV. So we repeat everything the way it is, but now where there is the initial cost, you replace it with 11 million, then we get the new NPV. All other items are now not going to be affected. What is being affected at the moment is only now the initial cost. So that we get the new NPV. So that we come up with the new NPV. So inakuja NPV inakuwa 39. So we get now the percentage change in that NPV. So percentage change in the NPV, you simply take what you have calculated as 3.9145. You minus what we got earlier. It was 4.9145. So also divide by what was there initially. Then get the new percentage change. So here you have to pay what percentage change? So it has reduced the NPV. So the second item is which item? So we got the item number 2, which is now meant to be the running costs. So we now come to the item number 2 as the running costs. Running costs. So when we go to the running cost, it will be affecting this part. So these figures, the running cost, you increase them by 10%. You get 10%, also 10% like that. Then you get the new annual cash flows. We increase now the running cost by 10% before we subtract them from the savings. So hiyo ya kwanza itakuwa ngapi? 76.
Yeah, 76.
Like that. Na hiyo ya pili? Yeah, put in 85 like that. So you come at this point. You now come at this point. You get those figures. So year 1 itakuwa ngapi? This one is 6972. 72.4.
69.72.
Equal. Then the second one should be 71. So when you add them, they should give us 14, 126, 126.69. Sasa hii ingine tarudi what it was initially. So remember the initial cost. Initially it was 10 because now it is not being affected. So that we get now the new NPV. So we get 41. Then now you also get the percentage change. So even that one, you only change this one. So get that new percentage change. And .16.03%. So that is now the running cost. The next one was which item? Savings, it cannot be a cost. Savings is a revenue. So we now check the services. So it will still affect this part. So for the savings to affect you adversely, it must reduce. So running cost, it already where it was. But these savings, you reduce them by 10%, where you get 90%. So get 90% of that before you subtract now the 4 millions. You also get 90% of the 14 millions before you subtract. So that we get the new annual cash flows. So you reduce the savings by 10%. Savings are a revenue. For the revenue to affect you adversely, it must reduce. So you get 90% of those figures. You get 90%. So that means year one cash flow should be how much? This one comes to 6,800. Hii ingine inakuwa So hii ya kwanza ni ngapi? 60. Na hii ya pili 63, 93. 96 point what? Ndio ikunja ngapi yote? 12, 630 point. Which means our NPV should be what? 2635.24. So pia utakuja hapa umake adjustments. Then we also get 2.63524. We get now the new percentage change. Come out now the new percentage change. Now get the percentage change. So for the impact, they will give you the change. Then you get the new NPV. Sorry? No. The term remains the same, but the effect is on the item. For the revenue to affect you adversely, it must go down. For the cost to affect you adversely, it must go up. But the impact is the same, adversely. Yeah. So it must be affecting you adversely. So you need to comment. This time they asked you to comment. So the comment for impact is not the same as the comment for break-even point. So let us check now the comment. Let us now look at the comments. The comment for the impact is not the same as the one for the break-even point analysis. So we shall have the key variable, then percentage change. Then now you comment about percentage change. Then comment. So we start off with the first one. The first one will be which item? Cost of the plant. So cost of the plant multiplied which percent? Negative. Negative 20.35%. Then the second one was running cost ilikuwa ngapi? 16.03. Then the third one is savings inakuja na
negative 46.38%.
So we are looking at the reduction in the NPV. So remember, we have been calculating NPV. So here the most sensitive is the one that has reduced NPV by a wider margin. Yeah. So the most sensitive is the one that will reduce NPV by a big margin, isn't it? Yeah, here we are looking at NPV reduced by this. Here it can reduce my year. So the most sensitive is the one that has reduced NPV by a very big margin. So savings will be the most sensitive. For the impact, you take a wider change. For the break-even point analysis, you take the smallest change. So get to understand that. So the one which is more sensitive is the one that has reduced NPV by a very big margin. Now you need 7. So it will be followed by this one. And this one is a list. Sensitive. So for the impact, we take a wider change in the NPV. But for break-even point, we take the smallest change on that level. So I will still be able to do one question on the impact. We have done 2 on the break-even point. So we shall also be doing one on the impact so that we compare them. Last Saturday, we pattern. So we are meeting this Saturday. Okay, so when we meet on Saturday, we shall see whether we can, the remaining ones are not wide. Yeah, the remaining ones are not wide. So we are likely to finish that paper on Saturday because the key ones were decision tree simulation and sensitivity. Those remaining ones, they are very small. We are likely to finish them on that time. So that next week we start mergers and acquisition. Na hiyo wiki ingine tumaliza ile the last topic because now we have 2 main ones remaining after this. Sorry. We come on Sunday. Yeah, sasa hiyo Sunday yangu kuna watu wa Limoni wana shida. But I will confirm on Saturday. We rather finish earlier. Hiyo time ya mwisho mjisomee, sio? Yeah. So we shall confirm on Saturday what we can be able to do. So we can stop there for now. Sasa nyinyi mtachitetea na theory. Mimi computation nitamaliza. So theory you read.